Thousands of years ago, on Yom Kippur morning, the high priest entered alone into the Holy of Holies, the silent inner sanctum of the temple in Jerusalem, to perform the secret sacred service of atonement. Outside, however, tens of thousands of people would travel from all across the land of Israel to gather together in the temple's courtyard, waiting to hear if the high priest's service was successful. Now we learn in the Mishnah that as this crowd of pilgrims approached the Temple Mount, they entered through a single gate. And once they passed through, they flowed through the courtyard in a counterclockwise stream from the right side to the left side of the precinct. But there was an exception. If something had befallen a person, the rabbis taught, if, for instance, a person was in mourning, or if they had been excommunicated, they entered through the gate and turned left instead, moving clockwise against the current, from left to right as they circled the temple grounds. Well, on this Yom Kippur, in 5783, you were asked to enter our temple courtyard and either turn to the right with the crowd or to the left because hardship had befallen you. Which way would you turn? This year, would you return right or left? Now, 2 years ago, even 1 year ago, I think it would have been easy to assume that we and nearly everyone else would have turned left upon entering the temple. We were all intimately aware of how boxed in everyone's lives had become, how much loss, how much disconnection, how many precious moments missed we all endured. But even this year, I wonder, would you not still turn left, mourning for what has been lost? Do you still bear the burden of the past's unfulfilled promises, or feel the emptiness of yearning for a future that never unfolded? Would you turn left for feeling forgotten, ignored, or left behind, for feeling the strain of swimming against a current, the fear of facing the crowd alone, the loneliness of being unable to relate to what's going on around you? Would you still turn left wondering, doesn't anyone understand? Why can't they see? Why can't they sympathize? Why can't things just be like they were before? And whether we call this time that we're living in post-COVID or still very much COVID, or we just don't know anymore, I suspect that what makes this year different is that when asked the question, would you turn right or left, many of us would still answer left, feeling the personal losses, isolation, and the sense of experiencing the world differently from others, that not rightness that is still with us. And yet, what feels unique in this moment is that though we may see our own reasons to turn left at the gates, I think many of us would assume that the majority of other people would go the opposite way, turning to the right. We may look around and see that the world appears to be returning to normal, yet we constantly bump up against reminders of how not normal the world continues to be. Whether we see masks or a lack of masks, whether inflation forces cutbacks or overtaxed schedules cut quality time, whether we see others celebrating the weddings and birthdays that we missed or were asked to test before a gathering, whether we see reminders of a loved one we've lost or photos of friends having fun without us, whether we're the only ones in a Zoom box or the only one in the office, I suspect that what actually unites us in this moment is that we are all experiencing that feeling of moving against the crowd, The feeling that things aren't right, that values are out of sync, that we're angry and frustrated or just plain worn out. That things are unclear and confusing, and old wounds have yet to heal. We seek closure on this challenging chapter, but closure still seems to be a distant dream. And those feelings might stem from differing or even opposing causes. Whether you're frustrated because you want the world to return to the one you knew right now, or distressed because no one seems to understand that your world can't go back to normal yet, or even ever. We're stuck holding our own personal losses and disconnections, which others may not share. And after 2 years of feeling that our difficult experiences were mostly universal, the different natures of our challenges now may lead us to believe that everyone else seems to be going in one direction while we are going the other way, that we are the only ones turning left, swimming against a sea of people turning right. Now, back in the days of the temple, turning left at the gates and visibly walking against the current had a purpose. It was not intended to make a person feel ostracized and alone or to add insult to their injury. Rather, when a person turned left at the temple gate, it was a signal which set off a clear ritual of response. When someone turned left as they circled the temple grounds, they would be asked by every person who they encountered, "Why do you turn to the left?" The person would answer, "Because I'm in mourning. I'm carrying a loss." Or, "Because I've been excommunicated. I feel lost." And whomever they met, whoever heard their story, would be obligated to offer a response. They would say either, "May the one who dwells in this house comfort you," or "May the one who dwells in this house grant you a listening heart, so that the words of your friends will draw you near again." Turning left was the start of a conversation. In this unmoored, unnormed, unnamed age, so many of us would turn left at the gates, and for so many different reasons. But how many of us are having conversations, real conversations, about why? How often instead do we make assumptions about each other based on what we think we see on the surface? How often do we think we know someone's motivations or create our own narratives to explain their behavior, instead of asking real questions and listening with empathy to the courageous truths that others speak? How often, indeed, do we withhold our own truths, avoiding real answers to others' questions out of fear for how they might respond? This is the season of teshuvah, which literally means to turn or to respond. Teshuvah, turning, returning to the right path by seeking reconciliation through conversation with those we have wronged. That process of teshuvah requires us to speak when we seek atonement. We must speak the truth aloud. We must ask the wronged party for their forgiveness and await their response through a direct, honest conversation. So too, in this time of turning and returning to the left, as we try to reach atonement, as we try to reach at-one-ment, as we try to reach wholeness and shalom once more, let us take a cue from the teshuvah process and from the pilgrimage in the days of the temple, and let us ask each other out loud, why do you turn to the left? What are you carrying that's heavy? What are you holding that's painful in this moment? Why do you turn to the left? When you ask with curiosity and listen with compassion and respond with empathy, You will help others find the courage to speak their truths aloud, to feel that they aren't carrying their burdens alone. And through these conversations, you may find that, in fact, we are all still turning left right now, still grieving, still frustrated, still lonely, still anxious, but all hoping that by this time next year, we may finally be able to return to the gates and turn to the right. Teshuvah, returning to the right path, is not an easy process. It takes courage and compassion for oneself and for others. And this year, as we seek to find our way back to a place of connection, wholeness, and rightness, we need to begin by asking those traveling this path alongside us, why do you turn to the left today? We must listen with compassion and respond with empathy. We must share our own stories and speak our own truths with courage and clarity. Through conversation which connects us, may we learn to travel left together, and in so doing, begin to feel right once more. May the one who dwells in this house comfort you. May the one who dwells in this house grant you a listening heart, so that the words of your friends will draw you near again. Gmar Chatima Tova.
Yasher Kohen.